you very much for joining me today, Naiffer. Today we're going to be exploring the topic of nitrosamine impurities, which I know is a topic dear to your heart. But before we begin on that, would you like to begin by sharing a little bit more about USP, the organization you're with?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. USP is the United States Pharmacopoeia, and we are the Pharmacopoeia of the US. Okay, so what we are the organization that set the quality standards for medications and really any related public standards connected to the public health of medications, food, and dietary supplements, in fact. We are an organization that has been around for close to 200 years. In fact, funny fact, USP was founded before FDA was founded. And it was founded by a group of doctors and physicians who really were concerned about the quality of medications. If we go back, think about back 200 years, not really standards, not really a standardized, not really a pharmaceutical industry. So all these medications were prepared on the pharmacies in situ. So these doctors were really concerned about the quality or discrepancy and imbalance in quality of this medication. So they decided to create this sort of a recipe book that pharmacies could adopt and somehow standardize the practice of creating these medications. So that's really how USP was born. It was a recipe book to create pharmacy preparations.
Excellent and very interesting, very fascinating, that even older than the FDA. So you're very kindly joining us as a presenter at the 11th HPAPI Highly Potent API Summit in June, taking place in Boston. You'll be sharing a workshop on nitrosamine impurities, which you describe as a constantly evolving story. So for those who are unfamiliar, what are nitrosamine impurities? Why is this suddenly such a hot topic of conversation? I feel like I'm hearing this phrase over and over again. And why are these impurities causing such a headache for the pharma industry at the moment?
Absolutely. So, I mean, yes, you said it right. It's a really hot topic for really anybody that it's connected to the fabrication of medications. These particular kind of impurities, nitrosamines or nitroso compounds, are very unique kind of impurities and very interesting because they are they belong to what is called a court of concern. Okay, and they belong to this category because they are known for being potentially genotoxic. So these are impurities that we do not want in the pharmaceutical products, right? Because they're harm to the body. So because of this, right, once the story of all nitrosamine started back in 2018, were identified in a particular product, regulators and industry start working to really figure it out if it was an isolated product, if it was isolated to a particular impurity of nitrosamines. And if we go back a little bit of time, this is back in 2018, end of 2017, a particular company reports, right, through a notification to the European agency that they see an impurity in their API. Okay, they see a little peak in their chromatogram and they don't know what it is. So they start doing additional investigation, as is mandated by any or expected by any regulators. And then find out that this particular impurity was a compound known in short by NDMA. Okay. Now, this particular compound, again, because their structure is a genotoxic impurity. So it was a big, wake-up call for everybody that impurity was there. Little we knew that little peak on that chromatogram and that investigation, right, was gonna evolve into the issue and the challenge of nitrosamine that is today. Okay, so we started with one impurity and we started with one product. Rapidly, the topic evolved that it was not just with that impurity, were several kind of nitrosamines that were found in these products. And then we're starting to also discover that was not just one product, which was the valsartan product. So then it was losartan, and it was all these sartan products. And then as investigation continues, we start seeing that was not isolated to the sartan family, but other products were also affected. So then we saw metformin, and we saw ranitidine, and we saw rifampin, and we're seeing all these products now being affected by this. So this, similar to that increase in number of products also increased the number of impurities that were found, nitrosamine impurities that were found in these products. So, I mean, that really shake up the whole industry. It shake up regulators about how we were going to tackle this challenge that we had just discovered. Okay. Now, something that it's really important to say is that these impurities are not new, right? We have known these impurities for many years. They have been studied for many years, but in other areas. On the food sector, in the actually beverage sector, they have been known to produce these impurities. Actually, nitrosamines can be also produced in the water treatment plants, right? As part of their water treatment processes can be produced nitrosamine. So these impurities have been around for a while. But again, I mean, it was new to the pharmaceutical arena, or the pharmaceutical space. And again, the expectations of regulators is that these impurities are not present, or are present way below, those limits where we don't expect any damage to the patients.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that very comprehensive overview. But you mentioned there that nitrosamine impurities, they're not new; they've been around for a while. So, what has been the regulatory guidance to date?
Absolutely. So when all these emerged back in 2018, we had some sort of general guidance, which was the ICHM7. Okay, the ICHM7, it's a guide dedicated to the topic of genotoxic impurities. Okay, and a lot of companies are familiarized with this because it was part of the assessment that they have to do during the discovery or during the development process of new APIs or new molecules. Okay, so this guidance present a very general approach to how to treat these sort of impurities. Okay, what are the things that you need to follow? What are the control mechanisms? How do you assess the genotoxicity of these impurities? The thing is that with nitrosamines, we suddenly open the eyes to have this challenge with so many products, with so many impurities. A lot of these impurities that are of a concern, right, don't necessarily have real animal data or genotoxicity data, okay? So that means that in some cases, we don't have data that prove that they're genotoxic, but we know the structures are the typical kind of structures that can be potentially genotoxic. So with all these, regulators have to be proactive as well, and they decided to then move forward and provide guidance to industry in how they were going to start dealing with this issue of nitrosamine. Fortunately, there was a lot of conversations among regulators because a lot of regulators were affected by this, and we saw then little by little the publications of different guidance by FDA, by the European Agency, by Health Canada, by the different agencies around the world about the expectation, and kind of set the path for industry to mitigate and go about doing this assessment. Some of the things that we will talk on the workshop, it's what were those steps that were kind of established in those guidance, what were the good, what were some of the challenges that industry faced as they went through some of these steps. And we will reflect also to where are we today, right? We are still on that path. And as product of going through that path of discovering, controlling, and assessing these impurities, we continue to see the appearance of new impurities every day, okay? Now in a whole new family, what are known as nitroso-API impurities, okay? Which are now nitrosamines that are directly associated to the molecule of the active of the API. So this is kind of like the new things that we're discovering as we go on through this journey. And again, this is now a little more complex in nitrosamines that brings a whole new set of challenges. So we're going to talk a little bit about that during the workshop as well.
Excellent. You mentioned, yeah, your upcoming workshop there a couple of times. I guess without giving too much of the juicy stuff away from the session, is there anything you believe pharma should be doing immediately to kind of bolster their risk management approaches in this area? And how is your session kind of planning to address that?
Absolutely. So one of the things that was very clear from regulators, and I think by experience for the industry, it was the value of doing risk assessment. And traditionally, we knew we have to do risk assessment for a lot of things in our manufacturing process, right? When we are trying to define residual solvents in our APIs, or heavy metals, or elemental impurities, or organic impurities, we do this sort of a risk assessment. Now, for the nitrosamine challenges, nitrosamine risk assessment take a whole new level, okay, a whole new value. It is so important for every organization to really have robust risk assessments of their products. Okay, that really determine the amount of investment that they're gonna have to do to mitigate their processes. Okay, one of the things that we saw at the beginning of all this, a lot of organizations kind of overseeing the risk assessment component and just going to the lab to analyze samples. Okay, and they were trying to screen certain nitrosamines. Now, there are about 200 nitrosamines out there. So it is close to impossible to do a lab testing that screened those 200 nitrosamines and said, okay, your product is free of nitrosamine. That, although it sounds great and ideal, it's not, it's impossible. So in order to not skip, right, or not elevate the risk of missing one of those nitrosamines, you really have to understand your process. So one of the things that I emphasize every time I had opportunity to connect with industry is the value and the importance of conducting a robust risk assessment. And you can see that I use the word robust, right? That means that companies and firms have to have full visibility of their processes, of how their ingredients were made, how the conditions of their processes are, how the every component of their medication is manufactured, and how they affect or can potentially form nitrosamines, if any, across that whole manufacturing process.
Excellent. We're really looking forward to digging into that further at the summit in June. So I guess finally on that note as well, why do you feel it is important to share your knowledge and share different risk management approaches being undertaken with peers at a summit like the 11th annual HPAPI meeting?
Absolutely. So as you pointed out at the beginning of our conversation, the nitrosamine is a topic that it's continually evolving. Like I said, we started with simple nitrosamines, and now we are in very complex structured nitrosamines. As I mentioned before, they come with its own set of challenges. So I think it's extremely important that we actually share this sort of information, that we have the opportunity to network and interact and kind of learn from each other, learn from the different perspective as well, and how each of these impurities affect the different components of all that. Other things that we need to understand, it's all the tools. There are so many tools out there, solutions, research, information, knowledge that it's been generated. So we really need to make sure that that knowledge is accessible to anybody and everybody that it's been affected by nitrosamine. That's the only way, all together as a community, that's really the only way where we can come out successfully out of these and, overcome the challenges of nitrosamine together as a community.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I certainly look forward to continuing this discussion in June and hopefully coming over those challenges together. Well, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us today, Naiffer. We look forward to seeing you in June in hopefully a sunny Boston. But otherwise, yeah, thanks so much for your time, and look forward to seeing you later this year. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Jen. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there.